to YouTube.
And it says it's streaming live on YouTube.
Okay, great. We're streaming live on YouTube. I am back. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm back with another board member of the Exoconsciousness Institute, Dan Brock. And I did an incredible interview with him the other day that just sort of dissolved into the air. But I'm glad he's back today, and we're going to go deeper into this whole what his work is and what the whole conference coming up, the Exo Consciousness Conference, the I-EXO, the arrival of the Exoconscious Humans, and that is Saturday, February 6th. It's 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern. Go to portaltoascension.org to register. And this is going to be a little snippet of what that's all about. So, welcome, Dan. Thanks for being here.
Hello.
And great. I was just talking to Giuliano. He's saying that he defined exoconsciousness as the innate ability of humans to connect with these other levels, these other beings, and co create with them. How would you define exoconsciousness?
Exoconsciousness to me is an innate part of who and what we are. We are part of the universe of life. And the concept of exoconsciousness is sort of a human term that we have adopted to define the sharing of our human consciousness with the consciousness of the rest of the universe. So I think it's an excellent use. It's a mouthful for some to say,
Right.
but it encompasses the basic idea, which is connecting with the outer world and other beings in the universe through a consciousness process.
So you're a big part of the institute, and you're going to be doing a talk on Saturday using dowsing. Can you go through? Because our last conversation, you talked about uh, people just use dowsing for yes and no questions. You go to a much more sophisticated level of being a dowser, and how do you access these ETs from that dowsing solution? I would say.
Well, it's very interesting to talk about dowsing in terms of it being a method that you can use. Anybody can use it for any number of things. And because of the other work that I do in the non-physical, connecting to the consciousnesses that are out there in the universe, the dowsing has become an important tool that I use in the conscious world to get information, to maintain that connection, and to further extend that connection to get the information that I need from the exoconsciousness universe.
Mm.
The process of dowsing is quite time honored. It's been around for as long as humans have been around, and using divination methods for accessing information in the infinite field, because it's something that we're immersed in. This exoconsciousness concept is really just one facet of the universal field that we're all in, that you access when you dowse. So for me, accessing that when I'm dowsing is a natural sort of extension of my abilities as a exoconsciously connected individual. So the dowsing is an important extension of that.
Well, talk about your work as consciousness first. So, when you say your work in the field, what work do you mean? What are you doing?
Well, there's a lot of different things that are involved. The process of connecting with the non-physical, traditionally we've called that shamanism. I've adopted the term spiritual advocacy.
Mm.
And that term to me is a little bit more honoring of what I do in terms of keeping shamanism as a separate sort of time-honored process that people are using all over the world and have used all over the world for the time eternal. The connection that I do is basically for individuals and working with other individuals, as well as my own projects that I do, to get information. There's information about individuals, their past lives, their future lives, their connections, both here on the earthly plane, in the spiritual plane that surrounds the earth, and in the exoconsciousness community. So when I talk about doing work in the non-physical, I'm talking about that in terms of being a spiritual advocate for others. The dowsing winds up being a tool that I can use that simplifies the process of connecting in a way that I'm able to use the tenets of dowsing, the approaches of dowsing, to access information. And that's, in a nutshell, is sort of the basics of it. Now, the nature of that consciousness connection can be just about anything. Sometimes I'm pursuing projects of my own, of which there are many, and I have worked with individuals in the past, doing various different projects involving both other people and working to connect in the non-physical with the variety of entities that are out there. So when I'm talking about working on my own projects, there are a number of different things that I do connecting with different beings. This could be any number of different modalities in terms of what I'm sharing with them about myself and what I'm getting from them in terms of information. And sometimes it pertains to research that I'm doing. If I have a question, I go out to the universe and I ask for answers to those questions to different beings that I come in contact with.
Well, let's get a little more specific. It's great. That's a
Sure,
great overview. So, talk about specific projects you've done with ETs. You told me about water last time. You could talk about that again, or you can talk about other projects because
sure.
that's where it really gets interesting. Because everyone thinks they know how to douse, and you're going to a whole other level. So, talk about some of that.
Well, first, I'll give an example of the connection that I make in the non physical.
Mm.
There are these entities in our culture that are referred to as archangels. And I have been very curious about the nature of archangels in the non physical and what those entities would be like in my interaction with them, which I would typically not carry with me all of the trappings of Christian based or Abrahamic religion based perspectives or perceptions about the nature of those entities. So, my connecting with the archangels gave me a lot of information. I was able to connect with various archangels and get information from them directly. Like, for instance, one of the bits and pieces that I got, which was quite fascinating to me, was about the nature of what is an archangel. And when I asked that question to the being that we referred to as Archangel Michael, I was told that they are stewards of life and that they are specifically intended to support the process of the evolution of life in the matrix here on Earth, the
Wait, but let
archangels
me
that
just
we
interrupt one second.
interface
When you
with.
ask a question, and you just have a pendulum that generally goes yes or no. How do you get all that other information?
Right. Well, what I'm doing is I'm talking now about a different process. I'm not
Oh,
talking specifically about the dowsing. So this is kind of like the precursor connection that I'm making in the consciousness field to these beings, and then that in turn can come into a dowsing
oh.
process.
So before
Um,
you douse, you make that connection, and then you kind of get more fine tuned with the dowsing. Is that it?
Yes, yes. And sometimes the dowsing, which I'm doing, there are a couple of different varieties of dowsing. One is called mental dowsing, where you're using sort of your mental faculties to come up with questions that you want answers to. Then there's an energetic form of dowsing that uses a process of sort of energetically feeling the connection and feeling the information flowing in. So it's almost like some may call it a download. The lady Nancy that is associated with I-EXO has an entire talk that she's done on the subjects of downloads, which she has examined extensively over the years. So these downloads sort of give me information about whatever questions I've put out there via the dowsing. Now, when I'm making the connection, like I was talking about earlier, with, for
Right.
instance, with the archangels, it's a little bit different. I'm making the connection and asking questions and I'm getting information that are sort of internal mind's eye downloads. So it's a little bit different than using a yes no approach with dowsing or a graded approach with dowsing to answer questions. What I am suggesting is that learning dowsing is a valuable tool for our life in this world, but it's also a really valuable tool for accessing this higher realm of information in the spirit realm and in the exoconsciousness universe to get information. So once you've sort of broken the ice and know how to dowse, using a simple yes no and a spinning of a pendulum. I have a pendulum right here. I carry a pendulum with me wherever I go. I always have one in my pocket. And
Yeah.
it's one of the most basic tools. And just simply using it to ask simple questions that can be responded to in a yes or no are quite often quite very useful. The basis of dowsing, some people will say, well, it's not me that's moving this, but what I've found is that there's a relationship between applied kinesiology and muscle testing and dowsing, in the sense that you're sort of using your whole body, just like you are when you're making a consciousness connection. You're using your
Right.
whole body to act as a instrument, act as a device that then translates into your muscles the movement of the pendulum. So the pendulum is simply a pointer. You can look at it as more of that. Some people use it in a spinning fashion, such as this, for energizing, or they can use it in a counterclockwise method like this. Let's see if I can get it. There we go.
Right.
To neutralize energy, and the pendulum winds up, for me at least. Now this is different based on your own personal belief systems. For me, it is merely a pointer, and it provides a sort of physical focus for the dowsing process.
It
And
points to what you already know in a way, because we all know everything about everything. And
yes, I mean the best analogy is, imagine the speedometer on your dash as it goes from 0 to 100. If you reach through the dash and brake and grab the needle and turn it to 100, your car's not going 100, right? It's
right,
just an indicator.
right,
So this is an indicator that's telling you. Now it
right.
can be more than that if your belief systems imply that. But what I'm doing using it for is primarily an indicator. But
Are
it
you
can
ever
also be a
surprised by your
tool.
answers? I mean, when I douse, sometimes it's like, well, that's not what I want to happen. That's not what I thought would get. Does that happen to you if you're out of the way?
Yes, it's really important to kind of get yourself out of the way of the dowsing process, so that you have this
Mm,
sort of unity connection to the universal field. And sometimes the answers you'll get are a little surprising. One of the things that's a constant challenge is to keep your ego out of the way and your
right.
expectations out of the way of the dowsing process. So putting yourself into the right working meditative state before you douse is one of the
Mm,
things that's sort of an important canon of dowsing for me. Now, as you evolve and you get more experience as a dowser, you can get into that state much more easily. It's like, a monk doesn't have to spend a half hour meditating to become into move into a spiritual state of consciousness.
right.
So the experience with dowsing does increase your connection as you get more experience with it. And one of the consequences is sometimes you're maintaining this consciousness connection, or waking conscious connection to the information flow. And you can be a little surprised sometimes at the answers you get, and that's very true. So there's a couple of techniques that you can use to get around that. One of them is called blind dowsing. And that is, for instance, where you can take a piece of paper and you write a question that you're seeking an answer to on that piece of paper. You fold it over and you write a bunch of other series of questions, or
Oh,
whatever your questions are, and you put those into a pile. And then you douse just the paper. This is akin to some of the methods in remote viewing. It's a little simpler, but it is one of the basics of remote viewing. So I would focus on a piece of paper. Okay, what is the answer to this question? And then the dowsing will give me the answer, and I write that down and I correlate it with the paper. And
mhm.
aha, I find out that, yeah, maybe I should be living in Scotland instead of, Arizona, uh,
Right,
which is maybe a bit of a surprise.
right.
And yes,
No, no, I just want to go
yeah,
more into the work with the ETs, because you've worked on projects, particularly about water. You said told me last time, right? And
yes.
how you work with these ETs and the dowsing to get a kind of tap into a higher level of action. Can you talk about
Yes.
that? Yeah, talk about. Yeah, something like that.
The in a very this whole water project is interesting because the basis of life is obviously connected to water, and the spirit of water is something present all around us and within us. And so water is a important consideration in our longevity, in our health, in our vibrancy, in every aspect of our lives. Same thing applies for everything everywhere else in the universe. All the other
Oh,
life out
really? Is
there.
water the medium of choice for
Uh,
most of
let,
living
let's
creatures?
let's just say that the ones that I've connected with, water at a certain physical level is
Mhm,
very critical. It's very important
mhm,
what you do with your water and how your water is prepared and
mhm,
consumed into your body is a part of the vibrancy connection
mhm,
that you make to the rest of the universe. So such things as longevity, how long you live, your health, any number of things. We could go off on a whole discussion about the importance of proper water in the functions of the body. But the idea is that there's a lot of other beings out there in the universe that have come up with solutions about what you need to do in order to process water for the best possible, most beneficial input into the body. So, in my work that I'm doing now, and one of the projects I'm involved in is connecting with these different beings in the universe. If you want to call them ETs, they can be ETs. They're not non human typically, or they are human potentially. Any number of different possibilities are there. And there are some of them that are using water that has been processed to remove what we call deuterium. And deuterium is a substance that is a little bit different than water. Has chemically identical. When the hydrogen molecules have an extra neutron connected to the proton that's in the nucleus, it's then called deuterium. So it has a slightly heavier quality to it because of the added neutron in the nucleus. So deuterium water is slightly heavier than ordinary water, which is made of just a proton and oxygen, two protons and an oxygen molecule atom.
So we
And
want to avoid deuterium water. Is that it? We
that
want.
is part of the philosophy. This is evolving. There are other factors I'm looking into related to, for instance, this is referring to an isotope. An isotope of hydrogen has the same proton, single proton, but it has additional neutrons added to it. There's another one called tritium, which folks have probably heard of, which is referred to quite often as heavy water,
Mm,
and as well as deuterium is sometimes called heavy water. It's a little confusing when you understand that tritium is an isotope of hydrogen. And so is deuterium. Deuterium is an isotope of hydrogen, and hydrogen itself, in its mono proton state without a neutron, is also an isotope. It happens to be the most prevalent
mm,
version of hydrogen, but it is an isotope. So the idea with water is that it is composed of hydrogen and oxygen in different isotopic combinations. And
mhm.
there are various isotopes of oxygen as well. So you have oxygen 16, you have oxygen 17, 18, and there are various percentages of those isotopes also present in water.
So
So
are the ETs telling you a way to make pure water and how to work with it? Like, what kind of things are they saying to you?
Well, right now I'm in the process of investigating that and getting some information, but currently the understanding is and focus is on deuterium as being detrimental to humans. It may be that there is something more, and this is something that I'm more in terms of something other than deuterium, and the oxygen isotopes may be a factor as well. This is something I'm investigating in my connection to these different beings. And the dowsing winds up being a tool where I can work in the physical and put together a list of questions, and I can dowse with the idea of I'm asking a question, but the question is being posed to the universal field of information, which includes, those exoconsciousness beings out there that are doing the work. Now, remember, it's the same universal field we have here on Earth as is out there in the universe. So they're all immersed. Everything is immersed in this field of consciousness, and so when we connect here, we are also connected there. There's an entanglement. You guys have probably heard about quantum mechanics and the concepts of entanglement. One of the things about this consciousness connection is it is non-local. So
Mhm.
we haven't really. This is one of the functions of the institute. We haven't really, as a species, evolved into a higher understanding of the nature of our non-localness.
This is
And
the
this,
Exoconsciousness Institute that is
yes.
that Dan is talking about, that is having a conference February 6th. So go ahead. We haven't evolved into what did you say?
We haven't, we're still evolving in our understanding of non-locality and what the implications of non-locality are. It's not something that we have embraced at an ordinary physical level in every aspect of our society. It does represent a raising of consciousness in an individual to engage in that as an understanding of the nature of who and what we are, because here I am, a physical person. I have a physical body, but I'm much more than that. Everybody is much more than that. The classic cliche phrase is we're spiritual beings have a physical experience.
Mhm.
Well, you take that much further, and you're a physical being throughout the universe, connected to everything. And why can't you connect to everything? Well, it turns out there's, of course, a lot of programming that we get in our society and a lot of information that is just not readily apparent to us, or we don't have the impetus to act on. And that's one of the missions of the Institute of Exoconsciousness, is to sort of promote the expansion of awareness of who we are as exoconscious beings, and to put us into a larger context, a context that is more
Mm.
universal.
Great. No, this is a great introduction, and you'll be talking about dowsing for the um, the universal field. But can you here? I have a picture of you there sharing. This is you dowsing to access the universal field. This whole conference is sort of a teaching course that will be happening. Um, so tune in February 6th at go to portaltoascension.org. Look for Exoconscious, the arrival of exoconscious human beings. Only $55. You're getting 9 hours of really important tools, inner tools that will shift your relationship to your own consciousness, to other consciousnesses there. Last interview, you also talked about that book that came out with those about the stones. Can you go
Yes,
into that a little bit?
I can talk a little bit about that. There's dowsers obviously all over the planet, and there's something of a difference in dowsers and things that they're investigating in different countries. As it turns out, in the UK, there is a British Society of Dowsers, and there are dowsers over there who have focused a great deal on expanding the concepts of dowsing to integrate a connection with ETs, a connection with non-humans, and the movement of non-humans. There were two dowsers. Let's see if I can remember their names correctly. Let's see. Jeffrey and Nigel were their
Mhm.
first names, and there was two books. There's a book called Secret of the Stones, which is unfortunately out of print, but it is available in England, I believe, and another one called The Phoenix Point. And in those two books, these individuals, Jeff and Nigel,
Nigel.
uh, talk about their exploration of using dowsing, exploration of the stones in the Secret of the Stones, the exploration of stone monoliths and sites in the UK, and the energy flow around those areas, and the relationship that that has to the history of the area, and specifically having to do with the Druids and the ancient belief systems that they incorporated into their daily lives. So there's a lot of techniques and a lot of information that's in that book in terms of how they use dowsing to identify different energy and energy flows and energy fields and objects as well in these various areas in
Mm.
England
Well,
and
give
or
us
the UK.
no, I think that's important, how sophisticated it can be. Can you give us some more practical, downloads that you've got from ETs about what we can do to help ourselves, evolve ourselves here, make ourselves more compatible with the planet and all that?
Yeah, there are some interesting things that have come out of this. Um, Connection that I have. There's a number of things. The first thing, there's sort of four principles that I work by, and the first one is sort of to do your own work. We need to work at our emotional body and to work at how we perceive a situation in terms of an emotional reaction. Anytime we're emoting in a reaction to a situation, there's something in us that is saying, well, we need to address this issue and correct this issue. And there's a number of tools out there that people can employ to address emotional issues. And after you sort of addressed your emotional territory, which is at the basis of this connection to ETs, the next thing after that is to um, expand your understanding of the nature of reality. This is also critical to the process of connecting to ETs, and that is part of the mission of the Institute of Exoconsciousness. Is to promote the idea that we are far more than what we think we are here on the earth,
Mhm.
and incorporating that belief system into our daily lives and how we view our existence is an important process. The third thing would be to sort of share that with other people. That could be just like what we're doing here, in an interview on YouTube, but you don't have to have a YouTube channel. Sometimes just talking to another person one on one is what you
Right.
really need to be doing, and maybe sets in place the direction of change that is going to manifest down the road as a significant event.
Wow.
Um, then after we do that, the biggest thing I think is to evolve our sense of community and embrace a larger sense of community with the rest of the universe, so
Mm.
that we can become part of that collective, the
Right,
collective of
consciously,
life.
we are part of it, just to become part of it consciously,
Yeah.
right? Because
And
it's
and the other thing is okay is also to, in the process of being, consciously more evolved and being heart-centered, we establish a sort of more uh, I'm hesitant to say respectful, but it's certainly we're recognized more as beings that will take a place in the universe of life. And that's
right.
extremely important.
No,
This
this
is
is
the
what
sort of basic things that the ETs are communicating to me.
yeah, this is what we're working for. I wonder if you could just do an experiment now with your pendulum and your consciousness if we,
Sure, I could probably
um
do something. It depends. Now, sometimes the thing with dowsing, I can tell you, is that the more my consciousness is fractured, my waking consciousness is fractured. Sometimes the less accurate the dowsing is. So it sort of depends on what it is.
what do you mean fractured your
Well,
con
it is fractured because my attention is diverted,
oh,
and a big part of my being is focused on the interaction that we have. But because the
right,
dowsing is the benchmark that I've heard over many years is you want to reach a point where you're better than 50-50. You're in more like 60% is kind of on the low end, but my objective is 70 to 80% accuracy with my dowsing.
well,
I like to feel that I'm being 80% to 100% accurate with the dowsing. There are individuals that claim 100% accuracy, and God bless them. I'm glad they're out there.
you never know,
Yes,
but I was
yeah,
wondering if we could tap into that, universal field and see if there's a particular message
okay,
for us and its relationship to what people watching and their own ability to tap into the exo field. So is there a particular, do you tune into a star system, a being, or
Well,
go ahead?
there's a collective. The consciousness in the universe typically winds up being in almost a collective form.
Mm.
So when you're interfacing sometimes with a consciousness, it's actually a collective. We're actually, in many regards, a collective. Our soul represents, if you want to think of it as as sort of visualize it, as an amorphous blob with thousands of little lights on the inside. Each of those lights represent other experiences and lives and consciousness experiences that have happened both on the earth and off the earth. So who we are as a soul is a summation of a lot of other experiences. So when I connect, quite often I'm connecting with a collective of information,
All
and you will
right, let's see who
find that
we
people are
get.
chanting.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's see who we can get. Okay.
all right. Let's see if I can give you any information
Mhm,
that is available here.
mhm.
What I'm hearing is that there's an infinite opportunity here for everyone in this audience, and not even in the audience, to connect with the energy that is out there and the consciousness that is out there, and the modes that we're using, such as technology. Can become a conduit for the sharing of information. So, not only is the technology in terms of the conduit that we have here, streaming over YouTube or over Facebook or whatever, sharing of the information, there's a protective sheath that can go around that will focus the content and create a sharing environment that
Mm,
is important in the communication of the information. This
great.
is one of the things I hear. And then this allows, setting this intention allows the any sort of outside interference or blocking of that information as a flow to be negated. So you're sort of neutralizing interferences in your with your connection. And that this is one of the methods that it's really unique and important. But the individuals have to set. What I'm hearing is the individuals have to set that intention. So right now, you and I can set the intention that this information that is going out is a protected conduit of flow of consciousness between us and the audience and all of the people that are going to be benefiting from it.
Mm.
Setting that intention when you're communicating is very important. It is what they're telling me, that it does set up both an openness for the flow of consciousness. You're coming through an individual and it's flowing from me to you and to other individuals. And setting that intention before you communicate is important.
No, I like that. And actually remind me to do that when we do the conference because I think that's important.
Yeah,
That's,
it is a short meditative thing that we could be doing,
yeah.
all the time. Anytime we're using a phone or
Mm.
connecting on the internet, YouTubing, or whatever we're doing.
I'm going
So
to write that
that's
down just to
interesting.
remind
Yeah,
myself. Um, okay. Okay. Okay.
and
Great.
the other thing that's interesting is I'm seeing this as a very positive, beneficial endeavor. So it's something that anybody can apply at any time, and what it does is sort of purifies the connection between individuals using technology, so that that information is flowing from one individual to the other, and you're having an exchange that is of the most beneficial nature. That's what I'm hearing.
That's what you great. I have one
Yeah.
more question for you because you're a really expert dowser. How long you think the whole COVID virus thing is going to be going on? I know it's a kind of switching streams here, but
Yeah.
I'm just seeing what you get. Of course, it's all comes through a personal filter, but I'm just curious about your projection.
Yeah, the There's a lot of questions that I've asked. I've spent a fair amount of time. I mentioned earlier something called blind dowsing, where you make questions and you douse the answers to the questions. Well, I've had a whole bunch of questions
Uh-huh.
I've asked about COVID and the where it comes from and that sort of thing. And it does seem to be an interference in our vibration. At the same time, it is here to teach us something. In other words, we experience the challenges and the difficulties under the pandemic that will then reshape us. There was
Mm,
a famous dowser who's still alive. His name is Raymond Grace. That's with no D on the end. It's RaymondGrace. You can look him
mhm,
up on YouTube. He has a lot of material up there. He did some research into COVID and was asking about individuals that had passed as a result of that. And what he discovered is that there was a relationship between the consciousness of the individuals that were coming down sick and that were experiencing the worst effects of the pandemic. And the information that he was sharing was you have to maintain your vibration high. You have to maintain
mm.
your consciousness at a higher level and
Right.
keep that higher consciousness perspective. And it
That's
actually creates a radiance in your being that the effects of the COVID and the impact of the pandemic doesn't have the same effect on you when you do that.
yeah. I'm writing that. I'm taking a note on that, by the way,
Yeah,
because every action contributes to our vibration.
it does.
So
But when people are reacting to, well, I have this particular position where what I'm going to do in this situation, if I'm faced with having to do testing or a vaccine or the pandemic or wear a
mhm,
mask or whatever it is, it's important to stay in a heart space. A heart space for humans is a place where we can exist, where our consciousness vibration is raising. And
mhm,
so remember what I was talking about earlier about reacting. There are folks that become very belligerent almost with their position about the pandemic, but acknowledging the diversity of human life and human perceptions and human understanding and human consciousness really can only leave us in a place of um, sort of neutrality in
mhm,
terms of accepting that there are a lot of people down there that are very germophobic and very much into reacting in a certain way
mhm.
to the pandemic, and there are a lot of people that are on the other side of the
Right.
spectrum and
You get
people
a
in the
time
middle.
frame, but you getting a time frame? Can you douse for a time frame?
I've asked a time frame last year, and I was let's see if there's
But it's changed,
anything
I
that
think.
comes up.
I think it does
This is
change.
always a bit.
I know it's not 100%, of
Yeah,
course.
let's see what I can get.
Yeah.
Hmm. I'm hearing that the peak of the change is still going to be about 11 months off.
Really?
Yes,
11
still about
months.
11. I mean,
Oh
it's
my
going
God.
to flatten out, but it's never going to go to complete zero. We're not going back to where we were before is kind of the implications of this. And so it's
We're
always going to
never
be
going we're not going back to normal. There is no more normal.
it's a new normal. And this new normal, we're going to maybe get a little close to it, but we're not 100%. So we're just going to kind of hover just above where we were before. You think about the changes that happened after 9/11 in our society, and you can make some analogies about the
Well,
nature
you're
of
saying
change in our society.
masks are here to stay, whether you believe in them or not, they're here to stay.
No, not
Oh,
necessarily,
okay.
but everyone's perception about the nature of interacting is going to change as a result of this. But I'm hearing, this is going to diminish, and really we're going to reach sort of a bottoming out point about where it's going to be. Bottoming out means it's going to be better. It's going to be
Mhm.
better than it is now, but it's not going to go to 100% just like things were before.
Well,
That's
so this marks a shift. I also think it marks a decentralization of the way people live.
Hmm.
We could be, you know, into more smaller communities and still be very connected by technology. And I think maybe that's also what you're tuning into. That's what I think.
It could be, also think about there are people that will latch on to the fear-based situation that we're in, and they're not going to let go of that very easily. And at the same time, there are people that are more than willing and have already said, I don't believe in any of this,
Right.
and they're denying it entirely. So I'm not a denier, but I do believe in a sovereignty of human consciousness in this process, and that we have to approach this in the most open kind of way that we can.
But is
I
there a relationship between the COVID and the ET um, awareness coming more into our reality? Or I feel somehow that's connected.
Yeah, I mean, I can only really speculate about that. I have asked some questions about that, and there has been sort of a handoff kind of approach that some of the ETs have taken about this. It's almost like, well, we're going to have to watch this and see what happens, because it comes back to me that this whole situation is somehow created by humans,
Mm,
either directly or indirectly,
right.
and we have to deal with it. And
So
there's
we
a
made this mess. They're not helping us out of the mess.
they're not going to help us out of any mess, really. More the opposite. I think sometimes I've talked to enough individuals and heard enough stories where things were working for a while and they don't work anymore, and so we get a little bit too close to some of the answers, or some of the capability, and at the scale that we're at. This is almost sometimes like asking someone to, eat the Queen Mary. It's like, well, I don't know how I can do that without dying. And as opposed to eating an elephant, which you can do a piece at the time, right? But eating the Queen Mary might
Right.
be a little different. So what I'm hearing is that there's sort of a um, vibration associated with the pandemic that is basically uh, we it's like everything, we have to solve these problems ourselves, and
Mm,
only in the process of solving them are we going to evolve our consciousness. And you look at the situation that many people are facing, and we're literally being pushed into polarizations. We're being pushed into, I got to be over here or over here. I can't be in the middle anywhere. And it's
right.
like, well, why is that? Why do I have to adhere to a certain restricted belief system about how to do things? And why do I
Mm,
have to be over here and have this belief system? Why can't I be in the
mm.
middle?
We're being squeezed through maybe a birth canal, but it feels like that.
Yeah, it is. You're right. A birthing
Yeah.
process is a good
Yeah.
analogy. Yeah, it's it's
Yeah.
it's a consciousness birthing process. Some of the work that I also do relating to artificial intelligence, artificial life, artificial consciousness. The reason why we're having such difficulties with that, I keep hearing, is we've got to find out what we don't want to know what we do want.
Mm,
We've got to experience, unfortunately, as humans, sometimes we have to experience the worst case scenarios before we can know what we really need to be doing. And
mm,
this could be part of the basis of the pandemic from a higher perspective. When you go up high enough, one of the things I was mentioning earlier was about the archangels, and one of the interesting concepts that they communicated to me was that the archangels represent, ultimately, they're stellar entities. So they're born out of a supernova explosions. Was the comparison, the analogy, or the
mm,
the discussion I was given. What actually it is, it may be different, but that's what I was given as a way to understand it. And so, what they represent is these various consciousnesses that have been born of the stars in our galaxy, that are then related to the sphere of the Earth. And the sphere of the Earth is in turn composed of pieces of those various supernova throughout the galaxy and throughout the universe. And it represents the culmination of all of that energy. And this relates to a sort of a hierarchy of the archangels, is what I was told. There's this Archangel Michael, Gabriel, Ariel, and then all of the other archangels. And those, if you want to think of it in terms of a analogy, it relates to, say, for instance, what the Earth is most composed of. There's one supernova that the Earth is most composed of or originates from, and there are others, just like I was mentioning earlier with deuterium and tritium. There's different isotopes, there's different sources for what the Earth is composed of, and that in turn has its relationship to the hierarchy of archangels.
Mm,
So this was quite interesting. It was an different perspective on archangels than the mainstream typically promotes.
right.
So it's a way to think about the consciousnesses, the beings, the entities connected to the archangel archetypes in a way that is more beneficial. One of the biggest things about the Institute of Exoconsciousness is that it has come into existence and it has a clear name, exoconsciousness, that implies our connection to the outside universe and to the outside existence of life beyond the
Mm.
consciousness that we contain here on earth. And this, for the first time in the last 100 years, 200 years, we've really sort of reached a point where we have a much closer understanding in our ordinary conscious life about the nature of the universe, the nature of reality, and at the same time, the spiritual understanding. So the two are coming together, and we see that challenge right now where science is saying one thing, and spirituality is saying something else. But at some point, they have to come together in
Well, they're
understanding.
coming together to give us a whole multifaceted picture of the true nature of reality. So we get the science, we get the spirit.
Yes.
And I really like talking to you because you seem to flow really well between those dimensional spaces and keep it grounded as well.
It's tough, let me tell you.
No, but it's important because I think this is how we need to live, aware of the frequencies of so many dimensions, and also who we are as we interact with these beings, with each other, with the earth, with you
Yeah,
know exogenous influences. So
yeah. You know,
thanks. So you, yeah, go ahead.
the last thing I'll say is just, or one of the last things is,
Mhm.
it's important to understand the role that patience has in this process and being patient
Right.
with everyone's understanding in science and the spiritual understanding of what's going on and what is the nature of
Right.
our reality, because it's constantly evolving. We live in a physical sort of bubble here, and we anticipate how things are going to be, and we can see only as a physical being, we see so far into the future, but we're not thinking 200, 300, 400 years from now. And things will be really different 100 or 200 years from now than they are today.
But
And we lose that
this
perspective.
decade is setting a foundation, I think, for that change.
It
I
is. It's
mean,
it's every single experience that we have as a society is like the ship is having a slight course correction and it's going off in a slightly different direction.
right.
And if we're all together, and this is part of the message from the ETs, if we're all together and we have a higher consciousness in mind, we can change that direction and then wind up in a different place down the road. And
And that's intention. We need that
yes.
intention to wind up in a place that will be serving for everybody, not
Yeah.
just a few.
And dowsing is one way that we can bring intention into physicality and
Right.
set an intention and manifest that through our physical work. I'll give you one last example of some of the
Yes.
successful use of dowsing. This amazed me. I've heard this from several different individuals where they used the techniques of dowsing as a modality for accessing the field of information and accessing their own power. They were able to take toxins that were in the environment, things that would ordinarily not be beneficial to us in the least, and turned those into fertilizer. There was two examples I heard. One gentleman talked about being approached by a farmer. He lived in a rural community, who had accidentally sprayed a chemical on his land, and he was worried about using the land for growing crops, and specifically for feed for his animals.
Mm.
And he was concerned about this. So he enlisted the Dowser and said, "Can you do anything about this?" And the Dowser said, "Well, I'll try. I can't guarantee you anything, but I'll try." And what the Dowser did is took the mistake of putting chemicals on this land and converted it with dowsing through his dowsing methods into a fertilizer. And
Wow.
the
You
person
could do
who
that energetically, I
you can
guess.
do
Yeah.
that energetically. Now, you can say dowsing, but there's a personal power and intention involved in this. The dowsing is a tool that you can use to help you focus that. The
Oh,
other
okay,
example
great.
was a woman that I read an account from a number of years ago,
Mhm.
where she had a a mine that was using a road next to her house to move material,
Right,
and she was having constant trucks all day, every day,
right,
rum, 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 going
right.
past her house. And she was concerned about the exhaust, the diesel fumes from
Mhm,
this. And she
mhm.
said, "Well, maybe I can do something with it to convert it with using a dowsing technique." And she was able to convert that to something beneficial for her plants and her crops that she was growing, and
Wow,
she
so
had
this
huge
is great.
benefits
You're
from
gonna
that.
be talking about that, at the conference. Actually, Rodolfo, maybe I'll get Rodolfo in the room while you're still here. He's also part of this conference,
Yes.
and I'll just let him in here. I'm talking to Dan Brock, um, and coming online, also part of the upcoming conference is Rodolfo de Avalere. What's his name?
Avalera.
Avalero. Welcome, Rodolfo.
Hi, can you hear me well?
I can hear you very well. I'm here with Dan. We're just finishing up the last interview. I'm just also going to show uh, this conference that we are talking about. This is the Exo Consciousness Conference, the arrival of the Exoconscious Humans, February 6th. You get tickets for an all-day event, portal2ascension.org, $55 for 9 hours, including the replays. I've just been talking with Dan about his dowsing, his technique that he'll be teaching. Do you want to introduce Rodolfo to the audience since you know him better
Well, I
than
know
I do?
Rodolfo through his association with the Institute, and we've been very fortunate to share together connection online. I'm looking forward to get a chance to meet him in the physical at some point down the road. And Rodolfo's from Brazil, so I think you're from
Mm.
Brazil, aren't you?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Uh,
And he brings such a amazing perspective with the work that he does with spiritual um, exploration to the Institute for Exoconsciousness.
mm.
So I don't want to get too deep into and let Rodolfo speak for himself, but
Right.
it's been a real honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to Saturday talking at the conference. And you're going to be our host, Alan. So
Yes, I
thank you,
am.
one of our
I'm
hosts.
the more I talk to everybody, the more exciting the whole conference seems. So I totally recommend it. Thanks, Dan. Do you have a
Thank
website?
you.
Do you have a
Yes, I
website?
do.
Yeah.
I have an email address and a website. It's dan@dlbrock.com,
Okay.
DANDLBROCK.com. And my
Great.
website is dlbrock.com. And you can sign up there for my newsletter. The website focuses a lot on different topics, but primarily on astrology. That's one of the other areas that I focus on is astrology as a sort of go-to tool that I use to help get information about what's going on in the physical and sort of see the patterns that are
Well, we'll
evolving around
see
us.
you on Saturday. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you
And
very much, and you guys have a good conversation. I'll
okay,
talk to you
thank
later.
you.
All right,
Thank
bye
you.
bye.
Okay. Well, Rodolfo, thanks. Are you in Brazil now, Rodolfo?
No, no, I live in Oregon,
Oh,
but
you live in
I,
Oregon.
yeah, I grew up in Brazil. I was born and raised in Brazil, and but
Mm.
I live in Eugene, Oregon for the last 11 years now. Yeah.
Mhm. How did you get involved in exoconsciousness to begin with?
Met Rebecca at a conference actually in Brazil.
Uh-huh.
And I think we had a pretty good connection at that point. And, we kept talking, and that's how I got involved.
So what is your connection? What are you going to be presenting this weekend? I'll show the, but go ahead, talk about what you're going to be
Hmm.
presenting as I share the poster here. Um, yes, what's your field? What's your, you know, particular gift to the exoconscious field?
Right, right. Well, I will be talking about, I would describe it as personality development.
Mhm.
I'll center, I really focus on what I call autonomy, and it has some long roots, philosophical roots, um, and I really need to get to the presentation, to get to, as we get to Saturday and we go through it, it will become more clear. But basically, when I say autonomy in its relationship with personality development, I'm really, I'm not talking about independence. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm not, I'm talking about a innate moral guidance that we
Mhm.
all have, may be
Mm.
developed in different levels, but we all have it. And it's what in in my studies I believe to be something that is in part why, the reason why we are all one and we are all equal, right? I mean, we all are different.
Yeah. Yeah.
The differences are obvious,
Yeah.
not only physical, but in every way, temperaments, emotional tendencies, I mean, just everything, every aspect of life. But still, there's something that connects us, right? And that's what
Mm.
we will discuss.
But that's always been true. I think that's
Yeah.
not a thing. How does that connect into the higher exo consciousness? Because that's
Hmm.
just baseline for being human in a way. Maybe that's what you're saying. We need to get that.
Yeah. What if it's baseline not for being human, but for
Right.
being an intelligent being?
Well, that's
Okay.
a good point. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So yeah, if it's something that connects us, does it stop here on Earth? It's a
Mm.
similar thing as is Earth the center of the universe?
Mm.
And then we find that there's a huge universe out there, and so it's about the same logic.
So you're saying the sentience, this respect that we need to have for each other and ourselves is a kind of, well, obviously universal concept, but
Hmm.
we have yet to really achieve that here. I mean, as humans, you know.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and I it's part of what I'm presenting, right? I'm presenting a couple two questions in particular, and one of which is, why don't we have ETs walking among us, right?
Yes. Why?
And and the second is, what is exoconsciousness without autonomy? So we'll explore those two questions.
Wait.
And
Let me just absorb that. What is exo consciousness without autonomy? Can you define autonomy for me and everyone?
yeah, yeah. So when I say autonomy, I mean it's a complex definition. So I can't do it without entering a little bit on my presentation.
You can enter
But
a little bit of the presentation
yeah,
just to kind of get, you want to
but
show us, do you want to do a screen share? You don't have to do the whole presentation, but do you want to do a screen share with,
sure, sure.
okay,
Let me do that.
let me see if
Let
I
me.
can, can you do it? Do I have to make you a co-host, I think? Let me just
I
see,
should be able to do it.
allow,
Yeah,
okay,
oh,
make,
yeah, no, you
okay,
have
there.
to make
Okay,
me a
now you should
co-host.
be able to do that now. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, just share a little bit so get people excited
Okay,
about
no
what you're
worries.
doing. And
Let's do that. So
yeah, I don't think Rebecca would mind. So go ahead.
no, no problem. So let me see if I'm sharing the right screen. I
Yes,
need
you're sharing
to
a screen
present
here.
this.
Okay,
And
okay, great. Word
I
autonomy.
actually,
I just
I think
saw
I
it. Okay,
I
there we
have,
go.
okay, so
Okay,
hold on. I think I need to share this, the other screen. All right. And now,
okay.
and now I'll present this. And you have this live, right?
I see it. Autonomy. One word. Autonomy.
Exactly.
Autonomous individuals are in harmony with natural moral law within their hearts and minds, which can be described as the divine spark of love and the root of moral life. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, so that we are not really discussing something like that, let's say, seems too religious, right? I would say,
Well, it's not
or
religious at all. It's how people,
exactly.
yeah.
I posted below a quote from Steve Jobs, right? So,
Mhm.
and it is exactly what we're talking about. So he says, don't let the noise of others' opinion uh, drown out your own inner voice. Oh, inner voice. What does he mean, right?
Mhm.
And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Um, as I will be exploring, we, you can recall a situation, for example, where you've done something that is totally acceptable, totally legal, fully acceptable in society. No one have reprehended you for having done that, but you felt like you betrayed your own consciousness, your own
Yes,
conscience. You
yes.
know,
You
that
just
is your
happened.
inner voice.
It just happened to me the other day. I'm in the store.
Right.
Someone kind of is talking to the cash register. He didn't belong cashier. He didn't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like saying, "Well, I'm just checking out here. What are you doing here?" I didn't say that, and now I just feel like a little off energetically because
Mm-hmm.
I felt like
Mm-hmm.
I should have just said something. I wanted to be polite, but there was something about the energy of this person that was just disturbing and it just threw me off. I mean, I know what you mean though. I think
Yeah.
that's the lesson we're all coming to all the time now. I mean, this is the challenge of this new age. So, autonomy means to express your deepest intuition and heartfelt feelings. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. In, yeah, partly. But what I'm trying to say is that we all have a connection with this inner guidance, inner voice. Now, if you if we actually pay attention, and of course I'm not proposing that it is the same for everyone, but I'm proposing that our own evolutionary path is linked to our ability to connect with the source where this notion, this moral law comes from, this inner voice comes from, right? So if you stop and think, like, where does it come from? How can I have higher moral standards, for example, than my society at large, right?
Mhm.
And if you stop and think about it, there seems to be a source, and and our progress has in some way to do with our ability to apprehend this moral code, right?
Hmm.
And this is not something that we learn. Like, it's not something that you have to be taught, right?
It's innate.
It's
Yes, you're
it's
right.
innate. It
You know,
has
I
to
think
do with with our well, I would say human nature.
you're making some really good points that I need to know and learn
Yeah,
because the moral law just is not just how we treat others, it's
right.
our relationship to ourselves and our
Yes.
feelings and what we feel is right in the moment
Hmm.
and what we're here to do as we act on this intuition. You know,
Right.
the
Right.
intuition is the true divine essence,
Hmm.
and you know, we're not trained to trust that enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We become more focused on the external rules than
Hmm.
on the external guidance. We call them law,
Right.
ethical codes, right? Am I allowed to do this or not allowed to do this,
Right.
right?
Right.
But the truth is that regardless, you still can betray your own conscience, and 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 it doesn't go unpunished in a way. You will, that,
You're right. It doesn't go. You can't. I think even more so now than ever, because the vibration is getting very fine
yes,
tuned. That
exactly.
it's so true. You can't let yourself get away with anything
Right.
right now
I,
because
I
one of
want to I
the
want to just really
yeah
quick. Sorry, I don't want to
yeah
interrupt you, but
no
I
no
wanted to
say
just
no
just point out a couple of profound consequences of the development of this.
yes
Because my hesitation in explain autonomy is that it's kind of a Pandora box. As you open up, so much comes out of it that
right
you know, as this, as I thought about it more and more and more, I realized how big it is. So
yeah
what, we all, especially these days, we're all engaged in creating a more fair society, a society
right
that lives in peace, and that we are proud to say, we're really living as all
hmm
of us.
yeah yeah no absolutely I think this is such an important part of consciousness and it's a
Right,
training for meeting the others so yeah so what
right.
are the consequences you think of this anti-autonomous uh
Yeah. So that kind of relationship, human relationship, where we're all really living together as brothers and sisters, can the question is, can it be imposed? Can it be forced?
right
Can
I
it,
don't think
can
it can't
external rules create that? Can we create a legal code that basically forces us to be living
no I
that
don't
way?
think we can this is an
Okay.
individual
So then we
evolution
go back to in.
yes yes
Okay. So at what point do we develop our autonomy enough that we can actually have it?
well we have to teach first we have to recognize it we have to teach that there is such a place as a
Right.
kind of inner sense of self this no one taught me that no one teaches
Mhm.
that but if I think children can start to be aware of these inner modalities. Like I think this whole conference is about this inner
Right.
awareness. So if I was taught, well, just go within and feel that right place and
Hmm.
what do
Hmm.
you need to say and don't suppress your emotions or your feelings or
Yeah.
your expression. If we're living that kind of world, that society that allows
Right.
that to be spoken freely, then this autonomy you're talking about has a chance to develop naturally, but it's not there. We're not there yet. We're still
Right,
repressing each other and
right,
peoples and
right,
groups
right,
and children, and we're still a little, but we're closer because people like you are bringing this up
right.
to start to look at. So I would never have thought of using the word autonomy to
Yeah,
describe it, but I think there is something that
it,
your interest you got here. Yeah.
exactly. And I often struggle if that's the right word. But I
Uh,
want to honor the fact that, Immanuel Kant created the terminology. It was, so it came out of out of philosophy. Then you have so many other people. I'll mention another remarkable study is from the um, psychologist Piaget, and Piaget also studied the development of autonomy. Uh, children initially don't have that autonomy. In fact, adults sometimes don't have autonomy, even after adulthood, if they are so dependent on external rules that they can't really be on their feet. The person can't be considered autonomous,
right.
right?
Yeah, a no
So,
whole other aspect to this is your body knows the awareness of the body. This is Louise Hay's work. If
right,
where she said if your body is pure, purely in touch, like if you don't want to look at something, you start to develop glasses to stop you
right,
from looking. If you
right,
can't
right.
stand something, you'll make it harder for you
Yeah.
to stand. Your body is taking its autonomous relationship to the mind's ability to be
Hmm.
conscious, and the effects. This is, yeah, Louise Hay put it all in a book. Will
Yeah.
start to um, impact our physical existence because your body is just there to assist the consciousness. So it listens to what the consciousness is saying, but takes it literally. And so the more we observe this inner dialogue and outer dialogue, the healthier we can take care of our bodies. Does that make sense in relationship to what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's a whole other
I,
aspect. Yeah.
it is, it is, it is.
Mm.
And I just want to point out that, it is really something difficult to explain. That's why I kind of refer to examples, practical
Yeah.
examples when I said, imagine a situation when, you know, you felt that way. Because it's, if we try to rationalize, then you will mistaken it by doing whatever comes in your mind, you know,
Mm.
which is not. It's not anarchy. It's not. It's autonomy is an inner voice, but it's not. It's an inner voice, um, that is it's not instinct, right? It is
In a
not
way,
just do whatever you
we've
feel
been,
like. It's
it is a sort of instinct we've just been
yeah,
ignoring.
but it has a moral layer to it.
But the moral layer, don't you think, it's moral implies, I mean, I know what you're saying, but it also implies that someone else is giving us morality. I think it has a foundational aspect of human sentience is
Yes,
integrity. This is the
right.
Chinese, ancient Chinese call it the Tao De, the dead, the
Hmm.
Te, the way. Tao is the way of
Yeah,
integrity. It's the
yeah,
inner and outer integrity. It's the in the Hebrew tradition they call it the tzaddiks, the
yeah.
righteous way, the Malki tzaddiks, and so there's many. It has moral, but it's integrity. I think is also,
Exactly. I like that word as well.
yeah.
It's integrity, and that's the word that at times I feel like could be a better description of. but again, we're using words that already exist, and you know, so
Let's invent a
but
new word. We need to
exactly, we'll invent new words.
yeah, because what you're saying is actually, there really isn't a word for what you're saying. Maybe not in
Maybe I
English.
don't know it, you know,
No,
because
no, I
again,
don't think
I just know
it's,
as much as I study, and you know,
no, it's not part of the basic human vocab.
yeah,
Maybe not, maybe in other languages, but maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe we
yeah,
have to create it, because
yeah,
even
yeah.
the words like consciousness, that we thought we
It
knew,
has
and
so many meanings. Yes, exactly.
it's
It means so
changing. The
much.
meaning is
Yes,
changing, and so
exactly,
uh
exactly.
integral autonomy.
Yeah,
I think there is a new word, and maybe in some Indian,
exactly.
Tibetan language it may exist.
We'll come up with it. Maybe people can leave their comments below, and
Yes,
we'll
but
get it from there.
I do know what you're getting at. You're getting at this inner, people call it
Yeah.
knowing, in a way, the
So
inner knowing.
right. So you talked about morality coming from somewhere, right? So
Right,
that really is what I mean, you know, and that really is the answer to that initial question, and the
right,
connection with you know, intelligent beings beyond those on Earth. Because if you think that there are physical laws that applies to the whole universe, right?
right,
Gravity, for example, seems to be a constant, right? The
right,
speed of light, or you know, I mean, just think about, you know, physical laws, and they might manifest differently in different places, but as far as we know, they are laws. They are constant laws
right.
throughout the universe. Well, could there be also moral laws?
Yeah.
And is
I
that the
mean,
source of what we are gathering? And you know, so it's as intelligent beings, as beings capable of, I would say, not only intellectual activity, but moral activity, at a level that, you know, and I'm really entering a dangerous territory here, but I would say that at a level that other animals cannot do.
right.
Because I believe this is a key distinction between human beings and animals, is this level of moral uh, assertion,
Right. But
comprehension.
I think it may be true, but I also think the relationship of other beings to consciousness, like
Yeah,
dolphins maybe, or there's a collective awareness, there's a telepathic
right,
um, back and forth that I think allows people to stay on track. Like if we're telepathic and you're doing something
right,
that's out of alignment or something, or I am, and then we get that instant feedback where,
right.
but shut down we've shut down that two-way
Hmm.
interchange, and now we're trying to get back to it to keep each other in track. So it might be universal, but I think somehow we're still in kindergarten about
Yeah,
how to operate. And
exactly. And you got the answer now.
mhm.
You got
but
the answer.
yeah, but what about some ET races that don't have the same moral um, qualities? Like they come, they abduct people, they take their genetics, and
Yeah.
that seems to be against our basic our morality boundaries, all that. What do you say about that?
Well, and we got into a territory where we just speculate, right? But
Right,
what I would speculate is that they they are more evolved technologically than they are morally, and like we are not as developed morally, but maybe we're not as technologically developed as they are.
right,
So as I speculate, that means that we are still not belonging to a collective interplanetary humanity. Both of those groups of beings.
Yeah.
In other
Right.
words, as you evolve to a point where there is a shared morality, where you more fully apprehend the moral law, um, then that would bring us together.
Well, you know, Bashar says, he says he's from these other realms. He says there's been a subconscious soul agreement for these things to happen. So there, I mean, that's another level of
Yeah.
autonomy that, you know, the
Right.
conscious mind might not be in touch with. So it gets sort of complicated when you look at why things happen to people and
Yeah.
on all these levels. On one level, maybe the soul
Yeah.
is wanting that. So you can't talk about autonomy. You can talk about it, but on another level, there's all these lessons too. And so I'm not sure where to fit. I think as I'm saying, it's what you're telling me is to become more conscious, become more aware.
Right.
Right.
More conscious. That is the right point. And
Right. Right.
it's another author that I really should link to this is Carl Jung,
Hmm.
because the process of individuation is really the process of becoming aware of who you are,
Mm.
owning yourself.
Yes.
It is,
Yes.
it is. You see, that autonomy has to do with, I know who I am, I'm on my feet, you know.
Right. Right. No, I think that's really important. I hope that is what you'll be talking about at the
That
conference.
is, that is what I'll be talking about.
Well, this is excellent. This is a great primer. Thank you for just giving us a little taste. I'm going to go back to that screen sharing here of the conference, and there you are. The name of your lecture, it says Hierarchy of Value Structures for the Exoconscious Experience, but also for just the conscious experience, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Did I lose it? Oh, there. And that's true. Everyone, this is a conference I'm talking to Rodolfo about coming up February 6th. Exoconscious Arrival, Exoconscious Humans. Go to portal2ascension.org to get tickets. And I think I've talked to pretty much everyone at this conference. Rebecca's founded the Institute for Exoconsciousness, which is how humans really relate to these ET beings. Darlene is a conscious connector to the ETs. Maya, I talked to, I think, nuts and bolts of your entrepreneurial experience as, yeah, talking about these higher levels of entrepreneurship. As it relates to higher consciousness. I just had an interview with Giuliano talking about the history of the star seeds in Brazil. Nancy DeTiertra will talk about remote viewing. Sheila Seppi about the walk-ins, how the evolution of the soul happens in certain people. I was just talking to Dan Brock about dowsing, but dowsing to access the higher field. And I'm just going to finish up here with Rodolfo de Avalera, right?
Olivera, yes.
Olivera, right. And that's me, hierarchy. So, um, okay, do you have a website or something that you could
You know, I'm starting a new group with a colleague from Brazil. We we're just getting it started, so we don't have much there. And most of what we have, it's supposed to be a platform that is in Portuguese and English, but it's called Academy Fraternitate
for which
.com.
Academy for what did you
Yeah,
say?
it's basically Academy of Fraternity in Latin. So
Oh,
we wanted something that was not individual, right? Individual language that is separating us. We wanted something that had historical roots and that was common, that could be, kind of more putting us together in one playing field. So we kind of went back to the name in Latin. So it's Academy,
mhm.
yeah, and the word fraternity in Latin, that is fraternitate,
Okay, great.
.com. So it's not a fraternity. That has nothing to do with it.
No, it's
It's
a
just the word
fraternity
fraternity.
it means brotherhood, really. Brotherhood,
Exactly.
family.
I had someone ask me this question before. I was like, okay, well, maybe I didn't think about it, but now it's too late.
No, I get it. Well, thank you for joining me today. And I
Sure.
look
Thank you.
forward to hearing your talk on Saturday. That's Rodolfo will be at the Exo Consciousness Conference. Join us all. I'm Alan Steinfeld. I'm going to put that up one more time. I'm going to sign off here, Rodolfo, too. And would you see the poster there on your thing?
Yes.
Well, thanks for joining us. This is Alan Steinfeld for the Exo Consciousness Institute, I-EXO. I think is there. You can look that up. And Institute of Exo Conscious. This is the one-day conference arrival. This is the beginning of many conferences that will be happening. All right. I'm just going to sign off. Thank you for your time, Rodolfo.
Thank you.
And I'm going to end the meeting. Thank you, everyone who's watching online, and see you soon. Okay. Good day. See you Saturday.